بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Welcome to the third and final day of the LEAP Summit. If you missed the last 2 days, my name is Noor Al-Khater. I'm joining you from Akademiyati in Doha, Qatar, and I'll be guiding you through the different sessions and talks happening today. Helping us manage time and stay on schedule is Khadija Aladdin, so that's the smiley face you may see pop up from time to time. We have live interpretation to Arabic available today for all of the sessions. So if you would like to listen in Arabic, you can select the option by clicking on the interpretation icon on the menu bar at the bottom. Now, LEAP stands for Leading Educational Advancement Through Progressive Schools. Yesterday, our sessions revolved around the theme, The Power of Play. We got to listen to experts like Dr. Stuart Brown and Dr. Anthony de Benedette, who reminded us all about just how important play is or should be in our lives, maybe especially as adults. So if you were with us yesterday, I hope you found the time to do something playful and continue to be playful in your lives. We also got to hear from different progressive schools and initiatives joining us from all over the world, from Hungary, China, the United States, and even here in Qatar. So today our theme is well-being, and it's another exciting lineup of speakers and schools to learn and draw inspiration from. Starting us off is Luca Perry. He's an educator, a strategist, and an entrepreneur who works with schools and organizations from all over the world to help them adapt for the future. He's also the founder and CEO of The Learning Future. Luca was unable to join us in person, but he has kindly recorded his talk for us. So I hope you'll enjoy what he has to say about well-being in this opening video.
Hello colleagues, Luca Perry here, and it's my delight to contribute some of my thoughts about this really critical theme of well-being. I want to focus on 3 different questions and try to take us all on a bit of a journey, myself included, into how we might position well-being at the heart of learning systems, at the heart of our schools, the heart of our kindergartens, of our universities, of our workplaces. And I think you can already see my bias. I really see this as the key theme for us to enable ourselves, not just to survive in the future world and to be able to solve problems, but actually to move into this space where we can consider what impact we want to make. How do we live not just sustainably, but in a regenerative way on our planet and enable each of us to thrive? I'm going to focus on 3 key questions. Number 1, what's a school for? Especially in 2022. I almost wanted to say post-pandemic, but we're not there yet. But this idea, we've had this incredible shock. So how do schools respond to this as institutions, as systems themselves? The second question I want to focus on is about what are the aspects that matter most? What are the conditions, perhaps, that we can focus on in the way that we design and deliver our learning experiences, our learning environments, and be part of a learning ecosystem? And the final question is, okay, great, now what? Now, what do I do as an educator? What do we do as a team of committed professionals that is working for better outcomes for young people and, frankly, for better meaning and outcomes for ourselves as well? The work that we do in schools, the work that you do in your part of the world really is so critical to enable societies to flourish, for young people to flourish. So those are the 3 questions I want to kind of hone in on. What's the school for? What are the conditions that, if we create them, might enable different emergent environments that are more fully human? And then what can we do about it ourselves? What action can we take immediately? So what is the school for? Well, in my view, we've just inherited particular mental models, paradigms from the past that no longer serve us. Schools were created in the 19th century, mass schooling. So many of us, were trained in the 20th century. And yet now we're in this new space, the 4th industrial revolution, as it's sometimes called, particularly by the World Economic Forum. This idea that we're moving beyond the age of technology, really into this space where it's now this integration between the digital and the physical. So I'm really interested about this question. Well, what is the school for? So many of our systems still, and the paradigm in which they function, is around academic achievement. And I celebrate academic achievement. It's fantastic to be able to succeed in a cognitive way. And yet that is a narrow metric and a narrow part of what makes us human. So what is the school for? For me, schools are about unlocking our full humanity. How do we think about all the aspects of what make us who we are and move beyond just the cognitive? I love this phrase that I heard recently from a friend and colleague of mine, Dr. Jean Clinton, and she's a clinical professor in psychiatry in Canada. And she said that we've been seduced by this tyranny of cognitive obsession. And I think it's such a wonderful way to reflect, the kind of Newtonian Cartesian worldview that we can compartmentalize and quantify and divide all of ourselves in a way that enables us to progress, which it has, also has side effects. And that is that we dismiss and we devalue and we demean the other parts that make us truly human. And so a school, for me, is not just about academic achievement. It's about the social, emotional, physical, cognitive, and spiritual growth of every single human being that's part of that system. So this is a multi-dimensional understanding of what a school is for. And when we move into that space, our questions become different questions. Instead of saying, what do you want to do? Or what do you want to do when you grow up? That question. It's how socially connected do you feel right now? I mean, these are the key questions, particularly right now in the midst of this pandemic, that we should be focusing on. So how do we evolve our understanding of what a school is for from just the cognitive into this social, emotional, and cognitive? And then critically, in my view, add the physical and add the spiritual. You know, the social, how connected? How much do you feel that you belong? What's your understanding around the dynamics of being in relationship with other people as friends, as teachers, as students, and all of the interplay that happens there? The emotional, what's happening in your body? How do you feel? When you feel a trigger, when you feel an emotion, how conscious are you of that? One of the great quotes that is really framing a lot of my life comes from Carl Jung. You know, until we make the unconscious conscious, it will drive our life, and we will call it fate. How do we become more conscious, more aware of what's happening in our emotional world? Because when we do that, we can develop things like emotional intelligence, like self-regulation. And that is what leads us into resilience and grit, our ability to persevere, to become even beyond resilience, anti-fragile, to continue to evolve throughout our lives. The cognitive focus, which has been a stalwart of the mental models that we function with. We absolutely need critical thinking. We need to be able to understand the opportunities and the challenges that we have. You know, how do we develop that beautiful part to become great thinkers? You know, philosophers, scientists, people that are really pushing the bounds of what's possible in the modern world today. The physical. I remember the great, now late, Sir Ken Robinson and his wonderful contributions to education. And one of his lines, which I always loved, is that, you know, we sometimes think that the role of our body is just to carry our brain around. You know, and I'm sure that's been even more the case now in the kind of the Zoom era, you know, the Microsoft Teams era that we find ourselves in as well. We have to focus on the physical aspects, you know, knowing that, and this is my old PE teacher and me coming out, knowing that our brain health is directly related to how we treat our body. You know, and having a sedentary learning environment is not in line with the current neuroscience and cognitive sciences more generally. And then finally, the spiritual, you know, that fifth part of, I think, the new conception of what a school is for. And this can be a religious tradition, if that's the practice and the kind of inheritance that you have and you carry. But it's not just that, in my view. Spirituality is a universal human trait. It's this concept of purpose and meaning. What is the purpose of my life? What is the meaning that I experience in the way that I contribute to the world, the job that I take, the roles that I play for my family, the ways that I am being part of something more than myself? This idea of transcending oneself, I think, is something that's so critical for us to think about. So what's a school for? In my view, it's to create, you know, have a focus on the cognitive, social, emotional, physical, and spiritual parts of who we are. The last piece on schools, I would say, is that we often talk about this idea of being in a knowledge economy. I don't think that's true anymore. I think we're kind of in a creative economy. It's what you do with what you know, as Tony Wagner from Harvard would say. But I think we need to go far, far, far beyond that. We're actually, yes, it's about what you know, and yes, it's about what you do with what you know, But in my view, it's about who you choose to be as you do things with what you know. And this, I think, is that really delving into the idea of identity, about our piece, our purpose. What do we want to create in the world? I think that's a really powerful piece. So to the second question now, what are the conditions and the aspects that this idea of placing well-being at the center of school? What needs to be in place? What can be the new focus if it's not just the academic achievements or test scores or the way that systems kind of rank each other? In my view, I want to put something to you as a hypothesis. We've all grown up in this A to F grades. You've got an A student, you're a B student, you're a C student, a D student, an E student, and an F for fail. Well, I'd like to position some new concepts here. I think it's going to be 5 or 6 new concepts. Instead of an A grade, why don't we focus on agency? This idea of a conscious choice, to be able to choose your own learning experience. Rather than doing student voice and student choice, let's move to student agency. In fact, let's go beyond that to learner agency. This idea of placing agency at the heart of schools is something that Charlie Leadbeater speaks beautifully about. And I think it's something that we absolutely need to focus on as one of the great trends into what emerges in education. B, not a B student, but B for belonging. How do we belong? With all of us being locked out of schools, in the work that we do at particular times, we've all noticed our social connectedness. How on earth is it possible that we live in this hyper-connected world, and yet loneliness is an absolute epidemic? The World Health Organization, for example, shares that depression is already the greatest burden of health. So the greatest burden of disease is mental illness. And so how do we change that? Well, this idea of belonging, being part of something, is critical. And we know as educators that that is what great schools and great communities can do. Not a C student, but C for creativity. There's something really powerful that I learned from Larry Rosenstock at High Tech High. Isn't it amazing when a young person creates something that wasn't there before? How often do we allow ourselves and our young people to be truly creative? This idea of bringing that even more into the center of our environments, our curriculum, our pedagogy, our reporting, our assessment, our moderation. I really think that's what it's all about. There's an artist in all of us. How active are they? How alive are they? Or have we hidden them away? So that's C for creativity. D, discernment, aka critical thinking. How do we discern what is true and what is untrue? The post-truth world, Oxford's Word of the Year, I think in 2016. It's so difficult now that we have unlimited access to information online. What narrative do we believe? How do we discern bias? How do we discern conflicts of interest, which are everywhere right now, particularly in terms of what's happening with the pandemic and the different policy responses? How do we discern what we choose to believe and what serves us so that we can have the skills we need for the future? E is for embodiment. We have bodies. And the drama PE teacher in me is, we need to move them. When do we feel embodied? There is an explosion of research right now in things like breath work, the pulmonauts, in the sleep scientists. We're understanding more and more that lifestyle medicine, the factors, the vitality factors and the roles that they play in enabling us to fully thrive. Yes, it's about our psychology and PERMA and the wonderful work of Martin Seligman and others, many others, Lee Waters, and these fantastic global academics. And it's also, in my view, about the things we choose to do with our bodies. Are you performing breath work? Do you meditate? Do you practice mindfulness or contemplative practices? How often are you out of your head and into your body to be able to notice what comes up? I think that's really, really interesting. Embodiment piece that we have not been teaching as part of schooling must become part of it, in my view. And I think if we add all of those conditions, agency, belonging, creativity, discernment, embodiment, we get finally to F, the F word, flourishing. And how do we flourish? This idea of thriving, and not thrive in an individualistic growth mindset paradigm where I will learn and I will thrive, but do so at a planetary level. Some of Valerie Hannon's wonderful work. How do we thrive at this planetary conception? I think that is such an important thing. How it's not about just self-actualization, it's about self-transcendence or collective actualization. The Ubuntu concept, a wonderful African conception. I am because we are. Where we operate in this self-delusion, this hyper-individualistic world where it's about my journey, but no, it's actually about our journey. And so those are the new 8 F's that I would put in front of us as a hypothesis. To what level is our school activating agency, increasing belonging, enabling creativity, focusing on and training people in discernment, moving into embodiment, and then ultimately creating a flourishing environment. And so that takes us to our final question, which is, okay, well, that's all well and good, Luca, and these are wonderful ideas. Well, what do we do about it? What do we do about it now? What can I create as an educator in my classroom, in my community? And I think for me, it starts with self. We must lead ourselves, lead others, lead our classrooms, lead our schools, lead our systems, lead our communities. And so the question is, how much agency, belonging, creativity, embodiment, and flourishing are you currently experiencing as an educator, as a policymaker, as a leader? I think that's really, really key. This idea of focusing on well-being, whenever we talk about well-being, we shouldn't say student well-being anymore. We just have to say well-being for all, because no one can pour from an empty cup. So I think there are some shifts in the system, being able to enable educators to do their best work every single day. Very practically, I'd love to talk about some of the kind of key kernels of practice that we could look at. Some of the social and the emotional learning kernels or practices that we may be able to use in our days. How do you own the morning and how do you own your night? You run your day or it runs you. You run your technology or surveillance capitalism will get you. So I think this is this idea really about powerfully choosing what you want in your life and how you can educate young people. Enabling them rather than, I think, the Dylan William conception. Schools is a place where young people go to watch adults work really hard. I think we move away from this conception of schooling. The schooling era, in my view, is coming to an end, and it's the learning ecosystem era that will replace it if we can all do our work better. So that's me, some ideas. What are schools for? What are the conditions and the aspects or the new foci that we can position? And then how might we powerfully step forward to this? What's one thing that you can change in the way that your curriculum functions, in the way that you run your classroom, the environment? How do you maximize on some of those different A to Fs, I think, that I've positioned? It's been wonderful to share some ideas with you, and I wish you all the best for the critical work that you do.
So, inspiring words by Luca Perry, and he's given us a lot to think about and reflect on. I'm now very excited to welcome Dr. Jenny Finn. She's the founder and head of school at Springhouse, a school for regenerative culture builders. I will leave it at that and let Dr. Jenny share more with us.
Hello, everyone. Can I be heard?
We can hear you all right, Dr. Jenny.
Oh, thank you so much. I am so happy to be here, and I'm definitely happy to be speaking after what Luca Perry just talked about, because we're very resonant as a living example of what he was talking about at Springhouse. So I'm excited to tell you a little bit about what we're doing here. So like Nora introduced me, my name is Dr. Jenny Finn, and I'm the director and one of the founders of Springhouse. And we are a private accredited school for teenagers and also for adults in the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia in the United States. And I've been working in the field of what I call vitality-centered educational and cultural design for almost 30 years now. It's hard to believe, but it's true. And I am really grateful to be here to share with you the design work we are up to at Springhouse. I'm very honored to be here. So I wanted to start, as I often do. I often start when I'm speaking with a poem or a quote, something that inspires me, because this work of redesigning education is very rigorous. It's very challenging. And I know those of you who are in it know what I'm talking about. So I'm going to start with one of my favorite quotes from an American author named Howard Thurman. And he says, "Don't ask what the world needs, Ask what makes you come alive and go do it. Because what the world needs is people who have come alive. I just love that. So education, in our view, is how we create culture. It's most important to pass down to our young people, taking care of and fostering the gift of life. So we hear a lot about the problems associated with the industrial model of education. And we also know the problems, the symptoms of it in our dominant culture. That's clear. I'm going to name just a few of those problems that I know we are all familiar with, but I'm going to name them anyway. So problems with the model: standardized testing that promotes norming, it uninspired learning environments that drain youth and adults. Further consequences exist, like a disconnect between learners and their communities. Little to no practices that foster healthy identity formation, and teaching methodologies that disrespect often the individuality of not only the learner, but also the educator. This current model is slow to change. I think we all know that, with innovations addressing the symptoms of a faulty design rather than the stifling principles at the center of it. So I'm going to say that again, because this is really critical to our work at Springhouse. We are about whole system educational design change in practice, not just in philosophy. So we're addressing the design principles at the center of the design, in hopes that what will come from it will be something different, rather than symptom manage, going to the heart of the design and reorienting those principles in ways that take care of and foster life. And now more than ever, we need examples of life-giving educational and cultural design to show what is actually possible. And I'll say this later, but I'm going to say this now, is that I hear a lot about the problems with education and a lot about the dream. And that's wonderful. We need to know what the problem is, and we also need to be inspired by the dream. We also need pathways of practice, ways that we can practice long-term over time, which is the most rigorous work we could possibly do within this system. And Springhouse now is an example, after almost 9 years of practicing a new design, one that's actually rooted in principles that I'm going to share with you in a moment. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Springhouse here. Springhouse was founded in Floyd County, Virginia in 2013. And what Springhouse is a unique intergenerational learning community. And our vision is regenerative culture. We're a school for regenerative culture builders. What does that mean? Regenerative culture is where all people, it's really a mighty vision, where all people feel connected to the vitality within and around them. And we heard Lauka Perry actually use that word, vitality, flourishing. That's what a regenerative culture is, where human beings are in connection with themselves, with each other, and with the earth. Wow, mighty vision there. How do we move toward that? Well, we do through our mission. And our mission is to create education that brings us alive. We call that vitality-centered education. And why do we do that? To empower us to respond courageously to the world's emerging needs. All of us, not just the teenagers, but the adults too. So vitality-centered education, as you can imagine, is vastly different from a conventional learning environment. All you have to do is come to Springhouse for a day, and many people do, to see what is happening there and how it is different than what we're used to. And sometimes it's so different that it's really so far out of people's comfort zones that it doesn't work. But for many, it inspires. So vitality-centered education is a vehicle through which culture is created. And in the actual practice, life is at the center of all that we do. So I want to just say a few things about our curriculum and how that shows up. So vitality-centered education in our curriculum is holistic. It encourages individuals to cultivate self-awareness and explore who they are in things like our mentoring program. Every teenager has a mentor at the school. And then we also have a skills framework. So we don't have grades or that kind of assessment model. We have a skills framework that we use in having kind of assessment or reflection conversations at the end of each trimester. Vitality-centered education is also place-based in the ways that we strengthen our relationships with our community. We're very embedded in the community and the earth through interdisciplinary courses, through our apprenticeship program, where we partner with artisans, local businesses near and far that teens work with once a week, all day. We go on pilgrimage trips. We do 3 trips a year and practice that art of wandering and getting to know other places while getting to know ourselves. And we also have an on-campus farm that we learn in. So vitality-centered education is holistic, it's place-based, it tends to ecocentric human development by honoring each individual's growth. We do that through rites of passage program, developmentally appropriate curricular progressions, and assessment models that determine readiness rather than mastery. And finally, vitality-centered education aims to pass down the values, skills, traditions, and knowledge needed to live in and build regenerative culture. One of the ways we do that is every family, every teen, staff member, anyone involved at Springhouse signs on to a values and action agreement. So our 6 values are on that agreement and how we embody those values, and everyone agrees to that. So we're oriented around committing to living these values. So also vitality-centered education, and this is what we share globally. What I'm going to share with you now are our design principles. It's vitality-centered education is practiced when people say, well, what is vitality-centered education? I've never heard of such a thing. Remember, it's simply education that brings us all alive. Like Lauka Perry was saying, it's not just about the young people, it's also about the adults learning and growing together. So vitality-centered education is actually practiced every day, happening right now, or in about a half an hour here, through 5 principles of source design. So we call the design sourced design because it respects the source of life within everything that's living. So and like I said, we now share that globally. So those principles I'm going to tell you a little bit about now and give you an example of how that principle is alive day to day at the school. So our first principle is to take care of vulnerability. Interesting foundational principle, to take care of vulnerability. We mostly do that. We do that, it's foundational. So it's in everything we do with each other and with our community. But through mentoring, young people learn how to care for themselves and their own vulnerability. This develops empathy for others when a young person learns to have compassion for themselves. So that's one way that we take care of vulnerability. But like I said, it's really inherent in everything we do. The second principle is to cultivate personhood. We see the very personhood, again, we heard this and what Lauka Perry was saying, the very personhood is the gift that we offer to the world around us. So we want to take care of that in a lot of ways. We do that by fostering the sacred, developing a relationship with the body, and also a regular practice of inventory or self-study, knowing what our assets are, what our shortcomings are, where we need to grow, and where we can really serve our community. So strengthening self-awareness is essential in living in a healthy and vital culture. So we do that through mentoring. We do that in a lot of ways through our rites of passage program. We dance and we sing together. You can't be building regenerative culture and not dance and sing and tell stories, because it's not easy in our world. So we need to be doing things that really connect us. And that leads me to ourselves and to each other. And that leads me to the third principle, which is building beloved community. Building beloved community. This is learning how to work together and work with diversity. This is essential as we face greater and greater social and ecological challenges. We do this at Springhouse through restorative justice practices. So when we have a problem with each other, we have a protocol and a practice that involves adults and teenagers. Teenagers are at every level of leadership at Springhouse, are often on webinars just like this, talking. And so we have those teens and adults are in these restorative justice practices where we're really looking to, rather than punish, we're looking to restore relationship. And like I said, adolescents are at every level of leadership. In fact, we just traveled to Washington, D.C., where we were able to meet with our senator, which was amazing, and then also the former Secretary of Education here, to talk about how education needs to change. And I had 4 teenagers with me when I did that. And then we also celebrate development through rites of passage. So that leads me to our 4th principle, which is respecting the wisdom of the earth. The earth is our oldest and greatest teacher. We have a lot to learn from the earth about interdependence, complexity, creativity, and emergence, and how these principles show up in community when life is at the center of design. So the last principle that I want to share is that we do all of this to love and serve others. Love and serve others. One of the ways we do this is really by learning about the history, the historical context of where we live, the peoples who lived on this land before us. That's one way that we can better serve our community, by knowing it more deeply and historically. So Springhouse is located on 11 acres with a farm. It has a day school for teens, a 2-year program for adults, and we share our design globally through the Source Design Network. So every fall, winter, and spring, we have Source Design Labs where people can really delve into the 5 principles that I just shared with you, and also learn about them in practice. So we have people even next week coming from around the world for our annual gathering who have been in those labs and now want to come and see, what does this look like in day-to-day life where a community, a living example, is practicing. 2 more things, and then I'm going to wrap up. One is we have a generative economic model. That means we do not charge. We are not tuition-based. We do not see education as a commodity to be bought and sold. This model is rooted in trust, transparency, and relationship. And the only way we can do this is because we're generously supported by a local and global community who really want this living example of Springhouse to exist. So that's amazing in and of itself. We've really just started that experiment this year, moving to not being tuition based. And so far it's going really well. It's really important to us. So finally, to wrap up here, we're clear that conventional education, the design, promotes an unsustainable culture. I think we're clear about that. And we hear often about what the dream could be in education. We need living, sustainable examples of what is possible if we could change the whole system of educational design in ways that foster vitality. We need examples, because examples bring hope. It's the shared purpose, a long-term commitment, and strong infrastructure to sustain and share the example. That's what makes Springhouse a truly unique and sustainable educational and cultural innovation. And I invite any of you who want to learn more to just go visit our website. It's a wonderful source of information, and that's springhouse.org. And we do have a Source Design Lab. Our summer lab is full, but in the fall we have a lab open if people want to come and learn more. Again, I'm honored. Thank you, 100, and thank you to the foundation for having me. I'm very grateful to be here. Thank you very much.
Dr. Jenny, thank you so much for sharing with us about Springhouse. I loved what you said, know the problem, but be inspired by the dream. And I think you've certainly inspired me and other in attendance today. Just, hearing about Springhouse, it's the work you're doing sounds wonderful. Thank you so much. So next up, we have a short video by Dr. Michelle Borba. She's an educational psychologist and best-selling author. The most recent book she's published is called Thrivers: The Surprising Reasons Why Some Kids Struggle and Others Shine. So in no way sponsored by her, but I highly encourage you to check that book out, as well as others she's published in the past.
Hi, I'm Dr. Michelle Borba. I'm right now in Palm Springs, California, and I am honored to be able to speak to you because I think we're at a pivotal moment in the field of education. We've gone through 2 years of uncertainty, wondering what's coming out on the other side, but we know one thing, and that is educators make an extraordinary difference on this pandemic generation's lives. I've been trying to figure out my entire career on what helps kids thrive. And I actually began to study this whole thing on thriving and resilience when I came across a piece of research that I think we all need to know. Her name was Dr. Emmy Werner. She was looking at kids growing up on the island of Kauai who were from very, very dysfunctional homes. And what she wanted to find out was their hope for some of those kids. So can you believe that this woman studied these kids for 40, 50 years? They shouldn't have made it, but she discovered 1/3 of them bounced back and overcame the odds. And then when she says the why, here's the reason. Sit back and listen. Number one, every one of those kids had a you in their life. If not the parent, the second on the list was the teacher or the coach, somebody who refused to give up on the child, who was what is called the caring champion. But the second thing that she discovered is that each one of these kids had protective buffers, like a toolkit. So when the adversity of the challenge came, they didn't rely on the parent to do it for them. They were able to go, I got this, I'll do it myself. And that's the second thing we need to keep in mind. We're already there for our kids as caring champions. The second thing we need to realize, in a fear-based, uncertain world, we need to get them a toolkit. In reality, when I look at, just finished writing a book, it's called Thrivers. I looked at which strengths seem to matter most. I wanted to identify 7 of the most highly correlated traits that are teachable, not locked into DNA, that boost resilience as well as mental health and peak performance. Just in a nutshell, the 7 are confidence. You got to know who I am and what I stand for. Second is empathy. It's a we world, not a me world, helping kids be able to connect with others. Third is self-control. You got to be able to put the brakes on impulses, right? Fourth is integrity. You got to know what you stand for, that you can stand up and do the right thing. 5 is curiosity, teacher. Keep on going with that out of the brain kind of thinking, so they're open to ideas and possibilities. Then comes perseverance. You won't stop when you've got some of those others going for you, but it's a growth mindset. And finally, optimism and hope. Now, I know you're going to ask which one matters most, or do they have to have all 7? No, they don't have to have all 7. It's a rare one of us that has all 7. But if we start weaving those into our classrooms, we're going to make a major difference on our kids' lives. And that's what I decided to do. Number 2 is start flying the world to find some of the most innovative ways we can weave them in. So we can keep teaching, but we can also keep helping our kids develop the toolkit and the agency to say, I do it. Probably the most mind-boggling thing I've seen anywhere in the world in terms of empathy, the ability to feel with another human being, was way far north in Canada. 3rd grade class, when I walked in and the superintendent said, you've got to get into that room. And I said, why? Because they're teaching emotional literacy in the most profound way you can imagine. What's so important about emotional literacy? Well, you can't feel with another person. How would you feel if that were me? Unless you have emotional vocabulary. She looks upset, or how does his body language look, or what's his voice tone? Our kids have been looking at connections of digital devices, not face to face, and as a result, their emotional literacy is going down. What's that classroom do? I walk in, they're sitting at the edge of a green rug, waiting for their teacher to come in. Door opens, in walks the teacher, 7-month-old baby named Clara, who sits in the middle of the rug. The real teacher, the grown-up, says, here's Clara. All the kids go, oh, it's our baby. See, Clara has been adopted by the kids. She comes in once a month, sits in the middle of the rug, and the teacher says, how's she feeling today? And the kids zero in and they start identifying the emotional progression of a baby. Oh my gosh, she feels upset. She feels worried. She's frustrated. What happens is roots of empathy. 800,000 kids around the world have been exposed to it. Bullying goes down, caring goes up, empathy levels go up. You can do the same thing with a puppy. You can do the same thing with a partner. Have every kid partnered up with another kid. Every day, do a 30-second check-in. How's your partner feeling? And then review what the homework assignment is. Empathy. Our kids need it right now. It's a nosedive level. How about curiosity? The most amazing thing I've seen anywhere in the world is the MIT Multimedia Lab in Cambridge. Well, what's so important about this It's probably where the top inventions of the world are being credited, from Surrey to artificial intelligence to robots. When I walk into this place, I am struck with looking at IQ points coming out of some of the most gifted people in the world. But when I talked to the director of MIT, I said, why does this place work? He says it works because of a few things that we've discovered of what stretches creativity, and we can use them with our own kids. The first thing is we got to make it fun. We got to make it playful. And so what you're seeing as adults sitting around enjoying one another, inventing things with Legos in front of them, and as a result is just mind-boggling. We're also looking at projects and passion so that kids have a chance to be able to go, hey, this is something I want to do and I want to invent. You notice that what I'm just talking about are two simple ideas, but there are ways that we can weave in from curiosity to empathy to any one of those other incredible traits. Our children are craving us. Their mental health is craving us. But that's how we inform innovators, our children who are going to graduate in heart as well as mind. And it's all up to us, the caring educators. We can make a difference. It's Thrivers. That's what it looks like. It's just coming out in paperback this month. But take it in terms of realizing it's science-backed. And boy, we do make a difference. Thank you, Leaps. It's been an honor.
So I love the stories she shared with us, and I'm going to consider bringing in my 15-month-old to Academia Tea every week and placing him, I think, in a circle of students. So our second school presenting today is another very interesting, exciting, and maybe, one some might, deem unconventional, but I'll tell you, certainly one I wished I was able to attend growing up. Please welcome Russell Cayley from Think Global School.
Thank you so much. Honored to be here with you today. I'm just going to share a presentation. Okay, so like I say, absolutely honored to be with you today. I'm from Think Global School. And I'll be talking about really the shifts that are going on in education. We've heard a lot today about, making the students, or as our obligation as educators, to really try and improve the post-pandemic mental health of students, get them more engaged in the real world. And really, we're on the frontier of a real shift, I think, in education, where our focus from Think Global Schools perspective is experiential learning. What we've learned, some of our mistakes, some of our successes, and I hope you can take a few things away from the session today. I want to start with a short story. It's one everyone on this call will know. It is the launch of the internet, and something we're on right now, but 25 years ago, it was as alien as anything. And everyone on the call, we all have to embrace something new, a new way of being. And I just want to show a very short clip from Bill Gates from '95.
Russell, I don't think we can hear the sound on the video.
Oh, sorry. I apologize. Let me reshare. I apologize to everybody.
Yes.
Share sound and go again. Okay, this should work.
Think about this, and what about this internet thing? Do you know anything about that?
Sure.
What the hell is that exactly?
Well, it's become a place where people are publishing information.
Right.
So everybody can have their own homepage. Companies are there, the latest information. It's wild what's going on. You can send electronic mail to people. It is the big new thing.
Yeah, but it's easy to criticize something you don't fully understand, which is my position here.
Go ahead.
But I can remember a couple of months ago, there was like a big breakthrough announcement that on the internet or on some computer deal, they were going to broadcast a baseball game. You could listen to a baseball game on your computer. And I just thought to myself, Does radio ring a bell? You know what I mean?
So I'll stop it there. So that is a perfect example of something new and skepticism around something new. What we believe at Think Global School is we are at the precipice of something new right now in education. We've already heard two great speakers talk about this need for something away from the factory-based model, exam-based education. And there is a groundswell of belief, I think, amongst educators, heads, directors, that we need to make change. However, that change is proving difficult to coordinate. And I think as we move into the unknown, it's extremely scary, it's extremely unpredictable. But ultimately, our story at Think Global School is it's rewarding. I'm the principal of Changemaker 2 for Think Global School. We are the world's traveling school. We go to 4 different countries every year. And our mission is to really embrace culture, language, religion, and a way of being, immersing with the people of place. Now, that is not the primary reason we exist. It's a great reason why we exist. But the real passion behind Think Global School is that we completely knocked down our educational model and rebuilt it 6 years ago around project-based learning and challenge-based learning. We believed ultimately that we were not living up to our core values and we needed to change. And that was the shift we made. We redesigned the whole school, the whole curriculum. So you can imagine the buy-in that was needed across the parent body, the student body, the teachers, the teachers that worked here needed buy-in as well. So it was a massive institutional shift. Now, why did we do that? And that is a very fair question. And this slide really sums it up. This is the data about the students that we are engaged in right now. And if you look at the data, it's pretty startling that data of how students want to be does not correlate to how most, not all, some schools are doing fantastic work, but how a lot of schools are not. So the idea that many students are siloed when they actually like to study with friends. They like to exchange new ideas and take risks. They like to help their friends learn. Well, in an exam-based model, that can be a little tricky. And that's what one they like to try by doing through examples. So that, again, I'll go back to the idea of risk-taking. So that is the data, that is the response to questions by the generation we are currently engaged right now. And I would say there is a disconnect there. Now, what we do at Think Global School, we really live around these 4 principles. Now, if you forget the travel, any school can promote these 4 things. That is agency, autonomy, purpose, and mastery. Agency, the idea of taking ownership. Autonomy is being self-directed. And based, you just improving and stretching boundaries. The problem with exam-based model is, when you get that A, it's kind of, okay, well, what next? What's going to follow that? When you're engaged in challenge project-based learning, there's always something that is generated from an idea. There's always a way you can stretch it. So as you can see, a kind of deeper dive into each of these concepts, that agency autonomy lines up very nicely with 21st century skills. All of us will be aware of that. Each of our projects has a driving question, which the students then are forced to engage in the problem. These tend to be interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary. The idea of mastery, doing a deep dive through singular issues or multi issues. Self-direction, which is a huge part of project-based learning. We will hear a lot about critical thinking through the summit as well. Project-based learning allows that to happen. And we're also big on service. There's many listeners and viewers today from the Gulf region. What service, what can you give back to your community? That is a key integral part of the Think Global School model. Each student, in addition to doing a passion-based mastery project, also has to do a service component, which is giving back to the community they're from, doing good. And there you go. There's some examples there of developing purpose through service-based learning. Again, I'm available on email if anyone wants to know. We've only got 15 minutes today, but I'm very happy to go into detail about any of these slides. So this idea of service learning, home community is what we focus on, not the place we're in. We will do modules about where we are, but service learning is about going home and doing something good. We've accepted the real world, and that is that our modules and what our students are conducting projects in. The last speaker talks about rites of passage. We also have that at Think Global School. That's often for us out in nature and tech-free. We do believe in balance, in addition to what I would call doing, the new frontier of modules, robotics, blockchain, Web3. We firmly believe that the outside world is not going to wait for us in education. The outside world, the economy, innovation, the startup world is not going to wait for education to catch up. They are moving forward at a rapid pace. Many people on the call today are from Qatar. The advances the Gulf region has made, whether it's Riyadh, whether it's Qatar, whether it's Dubai, whether it's Abu Dhabi, incredible things happening in the Gulf region. However, is education keeping pace? And it's going to be hard to keep pace because the advancement is so rapid. But education is tending, we believe, to lag behind. So how do we hack that problem? How do we keep up with an economy and a technology industry that's just moving at such a rapid pace? It's a difficult challenge, I'm not going to lie, but project-based learning allows us to really think out of the box in terms of modules. We did do a blockchain module in our term in Panama, challenging because none of the educators necessarily were blockchain experts. So often at time, educators will have to learn alongside the students. We're not necessarily the experts all the time in the room. We're not at the front delivering. It's definitely facilitation. And we have noticed huge changes in that, the students can pull content from almost anywhere today. Their cell phones, YouTube, there's infinite resources to pull content. However, that facilitation, that teamwork, that collaboration, that's what we enjoy at Think Global School. So what we're trying to do, we're trying to hack bringing these three things together. Place-based learning, yes, we travel, but it can happen anywhere. Whether you're in Oman, Qatar, UAE, you can get involved in place in any education. The four walls of the classroom is not it. We all know that in this room. Project-based learning, which is the idea of interdisciplinary projects. Very little in life is just math, is just history. Most things that we tackle as individuals, as adults, tend to be across a multitude of domains. And obviously post-pandemic, this is more relevant than ever. We have a course that is designed by us in-house, but there's a variety of things that can be used, which is the social emotional learning component that is intentionally taught and delivered at Think Global School alongside the projects to give the students space to really understand what's going on in the world today. Again, I can share any of that content with anyone participating today. So, what are our goals? Well, we want to see the world as global. Obviously, the world is shrinking. We want to look at ecological issues. There's a variety of them at the moment. Political, we all know that. And obviously, what's going on in the economy right now. We also want to develop empathy, and we believe that happens through teamwork. And we believe that learning happens anytime, anywhere. And that's really important. Learning doesn't stop when the bell goes. It's the idea that learning is continuous and it doesn't start. Good project-based learning has 7 essential skills, we believe, and this is widely held by schools that believe in project-based learning. And as you'll see on the far right panel, that idea of giving students voice and choice. We believe that students should begin to direct the curriculum. It shouldn't all be us. And the idea that students, through their passion and their innovation, should have a choice in where their learning leads them. Now, this will also be along the lines of, the 21st century learning targets, the SDG, the development goals. And this is, and again, I can go into more detail later with anyone interested, we have found a method of making this not just interdisciplinary, but also rigorous through the students designing very detailed portfolios. And as you can see, the social emotional element there. And that can happen that can be very cultural as well. It can be very adaptable for place. It can involve yoga and mindfulness and all these things, but also there are religious aspects to that, there's spiritual aspects to that. So again, place can play this massive role in design, in helping you construct a curriculum that has social emotional learning. I do have a video if anyone's interested. I'm going to skip it today because we haven't got time. And I'll just take it through to what we did in Dubai. And this is an example of how we brought place to life in Dubai. We had a term there, living in that city, and we looked at modules. Now, these were teacher-led modules. There's a difference between what the teachers lead and what the students design. What the teachers led in conjunction with the students who can take it in different angles were desert housing, wearable technology. Anyone got an Apple Watch will know what that can contribute, and robotics. Obviously, we used the Expo as a learning hub there, which was fantastic. And to help anyone on this call very quickly, helpful tips: let the students lead, take the reins off. Don't be scared of learning being messy. It should be. Leverage your environment. You're all experts where you're from. Use it. Using it can be amazingly innovative for these students. Push mastery, which is creation of original work and evaluation. Embrace 21st century learning skills. And that is it from me. Thank you very much. It's a delight to be with you. Obviously, there's a lot there. I'll send you through my email and contact details. Any more information on Think Global School and what else has inspired these changes, I'm very happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being with us, Russell. I think you're reminding us to persevere through, skepticism that can always arise from something new, but ultimately it's worth it. So that's my take home, because it sounds like you guys have been up to some really cool projects.
Thank you.
It would be great for the audience if you could input your the email or our website you'd like to share in the chat box. And thanks for being with us at Leaps.
Thank you so much, and have a great time at the summit at Leaps. Thank you so much, everybody.
So, no worries. We've now come to the final segment of today and the summit at large. For the next portion, we have 2 workshops from which you can choose from. And I think I want to preface each of these workshops a little differently today, because they're 2 schools that hold special meaning to me personally and have been a part of Academiaty's journey, whether they realize it or not. So our first workshop will be facilitated by Doug Schachtel from Portfolio School. And I want to share a little story, but I think 4 years ago, when we were first starting up Academiaty, we went on a trip to the United States to visit, progressive schools, organizations, learn from them, kind of take inspiration. And I think on our last day or second to last day in New York, we kind of accidentally stumbled upon the Portfolio School just walking to breakfast. And so on a whim, reached out, and Doug and his team were just so welcoming, invited us to the school, shared their time, their knowledge with us. And it was kind of one of the happy finds of that trip. So I'm very excited that Doug will be presenting here at Leaps today about the Portfolio School. And for the second workshop options, it's kind of a similar story, but with Joan Koenig from L'École Koenig. So in 2019, we were in Paris to present at the Paris Peace Forum. And honestly, I don't know how, but kind of serendipitously, by chance, found out about L'École Koenig, reached out. Joan was so welcoming, invited us to the school, so generous with her time and expertise. And, I think both schools for us were like the highlight of, the respective visits. So Joan has recently published a book. It's called The Musical Child, Using the Power of Music to Raise Children Who Are Happy, Healthy, and Whole. To choose which workshop you would like to attend, we'll put a link in the chat box now, which will redirect you to the website. From my side, this is the last you'll see of me today. If you've been with us over the last 3 days, I hope you found it as useful and inspiring as I have. And until the next edition of Leaps, I wish you all the very best. This is Noor Al-Khatar. I'm officially signing off from Academiaty in Doha, Qatar. Thank you all, and assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.